What's up, everybody? If you want to join the greatest online Star Wars community, the Fandom Menace, make sure you hit that subscribe button before today's video starts, so you don't miss out on any updates and you're always the first to know when our newest videos go live.
The following is a world-class Bullshitters exclusive.
If you were expecting today's video to be the finale to our Star Wars Trilogy Bullshit Edition, I apologize. Big news in the Star Wars realm has come out, and it needs to be addressed today. About a year ago, Disney released Solo: A Star Wars Story, the tale of how Han Solo met Chewbacca, Lando Calrissian, and more. The film went on to become a record breaker in the Star Wars universe, as it was the first flop in Star Wars history. There have been countless excuses as to why the film failed. We've heard it was Star Wars fatigue. We've heard it was a boycott. Hell, they're even so desperate to place blame that some dude in Florida working with a $70 webcam is the cause for a multi-billion-dollar corporation's failure. It's embarrassing. Just like with the backlash from The Last Jedi, Lucasfilm, under the reign of Disney, can't accept failure and move forward. Over the weekend, or early June 2019 for those watching sometime in the future, an interview with Ron Howard discussing Solo's failure was released. Now, of course, this being Hollywood, they couldn't help themselves but place the blame on the fans. It's funny discussing anti-consumer mentality all while discussing the failure of a film because not enough fans went to see it. Anyway, MovieWeb has the story. Ron Howard points blame at Star Wars trolls for Solo bombing at the box office. Solo: A Star Wars Story has been in the news quite a bit lately. Last week, Star Wars fans were able to get the movie trending on social media in hopes that it would get the attention of the studio to greenlight a sequel. More on that later. While the sequel is a long shot, the first one was a fun project for Ron Howard to direct. He recently decided to look back and give some reasoning to why it didn't perform at the box office. Ron Howard felt very good with the way his Star Wars movie turned out, and he enjoyed the way it played to audiences. However, he does wish it would have done a bit better at the box office, along with the people behind the scenes. The director discussed some of the reasons why the movie didn't do as well as it should have, including the release date, elements possibly being too nostalgic, The Last Jedi backlash, and more. But when it comes down to it, Howard believes the negativity was to blame for some of the low box office numbers. He explains. So whatever millions Solo made worldwide, those were the core fans, but it didn't hit that zeitgeist point for whatever reason. Timing, young Han Solo, pushback from the previous movie, which I kept hearing was maybe something, and some trolling, definitely some trolling. Some actual aggressive. It was pretty interesting. Not so much a little bit of the Twitter feed, yes, but it was especially noticeable prior to the release of the movie. Several of the algorithms, whether it was Metacritic or Rotten Tomatoes, there was an inordinate push down on the want to see and on the fan voting. And when you look at it, it's like 3, 4, 5, or whatever the rating is. I forgot what the rating is on Rotten Tomatoes, whether it's a scale of 1 to 5 or 1 to 10. But it's pretty high, and then there's a series of zeros or 0.5s or 1s. The Star Wars franchise and the Marvel Cinematic Universe have been targeted by online trolls many times over the past few years. Teams of people were going to popular review sites to fire off angry reviews before the movies were even released in theaters, which dropped their scores. Rotten Tomatoes has taken a new stance on trolling and have implemented some strategies to keep trolls from review bombing movies. Ron Howard was given a pretty good bashing on social media by certain groups of Star Wars fans for his work on Solo after it hit theaters. But the director knew that was all part of jumping on board the franchise and does not feel badly about the way everything went down. Howard went on to praise Alden Ehrenreich for his performance as the young Han Solo. He had this to say. Under that circumstance, I didn't take it personally at all, but I felt badly. And I thought Alden did a really great job. An incredibly talented guy and dedicated guy, and I had a blast with everybody. And look, a year later, it's kind of interesting. You wouldn't think that you would participate in a Star Wars project and have it be a cult movie, but I can already tell those who have affection are pretty adamant in their feelings. And that's nice. Solo has already been looked at in a more positive light since it was released a year ago. Star Wars fans are starting to come around to it, even fans who were not into it at the time of its release. Does this mean Solo 2 is on the way? Probably not. Especially when you have a contingent of YouTubers like Comic Artist Pro Secrets and Geeks+gamers and many others continuing to fill the pockets of the fanbase with old seawater, dragging them down every chance they get, continuing to shine the spotlight on the less savory aspects of Lucasfilm and what they are currently doing with the franchise. So they now accept the backlash in regards to The Last Jedi? Cool story, bro. Looks like you've changed the narrative you've been pushing for the whole time. Seems like another thing that the Fandom Menace was right about all along. Speaking of the Fandom Menace, how come Ethan and Jeremy get cited in literary masterpieces from MovieWeb? I mean, my Solo videos got millions of views. Oh well. I'm not in it for the glory, just the fortune. Now, the one thing I'd like to say about Ron Howard is that the man does not seem bitter. He regrets the outcome of his film, but he's not Rian Johnson, constantly taking shots at fans when he should be busy on his own trilogy. Yeah, like that's happening. 2018 was a nightmare for Star Wars. To be a fly on the wall of Lucasfilm would have been incredible. First, The Last Jedi was a problem, which we now know they acknowledge. Second, Solo flopped. And to use just one example of bad leadership as point 3 would be difficult due to the dozens of faux pas in 2018. Ron Howard, Disney, and everyone at Lucasfilm knows that Solo flopping wasn't the result of online trolls. Hordes of trolls didn't keep people from entering theaters. Hordes of trolls didn't scare people off. One troll did. This one. Timing and a lack of interest are what caused Solo to bomb. As Ron Howard put it, there was a pushback from the previous movie. In the months between The Last Jedi and Solo, it was a small vocal minority. Racists, misogynists, the plague, the Spanish Inquisition. You didn't expect them? No one does. And those were the reasons that Star Wars was in a bad place. From December through May, Lucasfilm, Disney, and the Access Media kept calling the money-spending audience terrible things. Then, when we didn't show up, we were still somehow to blame. The lack of interest is one of the reasons I think the movie flopped. First off, people spent 41 years watching Harrison Ford as Han Solo. The idea of another actor playing the role just didn't hit with a lot of people. Thankfully, Indiana Jones won't suffer the same fate. Also, knowing too much about said character ruins the mystique. People have hated the changes made to Han Solo in the special edition of A New Hope, where Greedo shot first, because it changes the dynamic of the cold, ruthless pirate that has a change of heart and saves the day at the last minute. Solo, the film, alters the character by giving his name and origin, showing him as a scrappy youngster, and making him seem almost secondary to the plot at times. Hollywood seems to be stuck in this state of showing how great characters become great, but never really making a great film in the process. Christopher Nolan's Batman Begins does an excellent job showing the origin of Batman, but then proceeds to show us Batman in action. If we never got another film after Begins, we got a Batman film where the character was in his prime. Solo? No. That film ends with the promise of more adventures, but that ain't happening. We already knew what we needed to know about the character. Now maybe, just maybe, the film felt broken because the directors were fired with an almost completed film under their belts by their witless studio president, Kathleen Kennedy. There's no way that the drama about Alden Ehrenreich not being able to act and the reshoots led to a bad, broken film, is it? No, let's just blame the fans. Ron's comments on internet trolling are misguided. Maybe Ron's having a boomer moment. Who knows? But as I've stated before, last year we were a small vocal minority. This year it's all our fault. Which is it? I'm really tired of the weaponized Rotten Tomato argument. It's always used in the favor of the studios. What about all the fake 5-star reviews left by accounts that populate Rotten Tomatoes? Well, those are acceptable. They're corporately approved and follow the official narrative. We just went through a massive overhaul on Rotten Tomatoes thanks to Captain Marvel, and now Hollywood is trying to retroactively blame Rotten Tomatoes for other failures. It's a mess. Speaking of messes, the idea of another Solo film. Before this Ron Howard interview was released, I had been hearing rumblings of a fan movement for a Solo 2. And I found this article over on Dork Side of the Force. Star Wars fans petition to get a sequel for Solo: A Star Wars Story. A fan campaign has gained some traction online to get a sequel to last year's Solo: A Star Wars Story. Here's a breakdown of what happened. This time last year, Solo: A Star Wars Story was released in theaters, as Disney pushed to see if the franchise could evolve to produce 2 movies per year. Unfortunately, Solo appeared to be set up for disaster from the start. The movie ended up being the lowest grossing box office of any Star Wars film, and as a result, Disney opted to cancel upcoming anthology films moving forward. And after the release of The Rise of Skywalker in December, they will take a hiatus from making new films until 2022. Solo: A Star Wars Story struggle at the box office was mainly due to competition in theaters at the time. The film opened up against Avengers: Infinity War and Deadpool 2, which were 2 of the most popular films of 2018. I'm pretty sure there was a month between Avengers and Solo. In addition, many fans were against seeing a Han Solo prequel to begin with, and there was a lot of turmoil behind the scenes of the production, such as the original directors getting fired and extensive reshoots. After The Last Jedi was received with mixed reactions from fans, a lot of Star Wars diehards opted not to go see it in theaters, and this all led to the movie underperforming. Despite the turmoil regarding the movie's production, the movie actually turned out alright. It was far from a perfect film, but it was an entertaining story, and Alden Ehrenreich did as good a job as anyone could have hoped for the role of a young Han Solo. This has sparked a group of Star Wars fans to start a campaign to convince Disney to give Solo: A Star Wars Story a sequel, with hashtag #MakeSolo2Happen being used to spread the word. As of Thursday night, hashtag #MakeSolo2Happen was one of the top trends in the United States, with the hashtag being retweeted over 24,000 times. Initially, I laughed this off because of the absurdity of Disney making a sequel to a bomb. Now, for those out there that are on board with this movement, how do you feel about the 1,000,000+ signatures to remake Game of Thrones Season 8? You cool with that one too? Look, Han Solo was my favorite Star Wars character, and even I didn't love this film. The thought of a Han Solo film excited me, but the result was sort of disappointment. I'd rank it second out of the 4 Disney Star Wars films. Below Rogue One, but well above the trash that's been passed off as episodes 7 and 8. Star Wars is in a bad place, and it's been that way for quite a while, actually. Not everyone was aware back in 2015, but once they put on the sunglasses and saw the truth, the fans have petered off. But that's not stopping our friends from Dork Side of the Force giving us 5 reasons why we need Solo 2. Now. When? Oh, God damn it, now! Star Wars, 5 reasons we need a sequel to Solo now. 1. Han and Chewie's adventures. Han Solo and Chewbacca are some of the greatest friends in cinema. Even though all the drama in their personal lives, they've always had each other. There's so much that could be done with these 2 great friends. Yeah, that's kind of a valid point. I wanted to see them in action in this film, but I had to learn how they met. But they did trust each other pretty quickly. But I think part of the Han Solo-Chewbacca dynamic comes from the acting charisma of Harrison Ford, not necessarily Alden Ehrenreich. Next, Lando love. Well, I saw Lando fall in love with a robot, so that's enough Lando love for me. Then we have Kira's journey. True, Kira was an interesting character, but if they do make a sequel, I want to put Han Solo and Chewbacca in a completely different scenario, a new setting. We don't need any of these characters. Number 4, more Enfys Nest. No. 5, Darth Maul and Crimson Dawn. It's kind of messy that Darth Maul even survived episode 1, but I'm not going to sit and complain about the Clone Wars and the Star Wars Rebels TV series. I don't really think you need any more Darth Maul. So folks, no matter how passionate the social media campaign, the truth of the matter is that Solo failed to make money, and the only thing Disney cares about when greenlighting a sequel is the green. Money. So that's it for today. Folks, I hope you weren't too upset that we didn't do the conclusion of the Star Wars Trilogy Bullshit Edition. I've been enjoying it, you've been enjoying it, I see the views, they're up high, crazy amounts of numbers, about 500,000 between the 2 videos. But I had to cover this, because Solo, a Star Wars story, they just can't accept that it failed. I think the fandom menace was over the film, well, before it even came out. There are so many reasons why that movie didn't work. Ron Howard knows a few, but he couldn't help himself but try to poke the bear that is the fandom and, get a few jabs in there at us. I'm surprised they didn't somehow turn this into a sexist rant. I'm surprised it just didn't happen, but, they pick and choose their battles as to when to use those words. But troll is their favorite. And the funny thing about all this is the only person that does any of the trolling is Rian Johnson, the man who had the power to direct a Star Wars film, but spends all of his free time picking apart fans on Twitter because he's so busy. I guess he's not. But I want to know what you guys think. Do you want to see a Solo 2? I never even thought we'd be talking about this, but hey, passionate fan campaigns and all that other happy horse shit is happening, so maybe that's the case. No, it's not. We know that's not the case. This movie will not happen. Because the first one was a flop. And Disney is a business. Believe me, I could write passionate pleas to movie studios to make sequels to films that aren't going to happen. I could write a 400-page letter to Sony and Disney. Please make Spider-Man 4 from Sam Raimi. No matter how well worded it is, and if I got 1 billion signatures, it still wouldn't happen. It's the same reason we're never going to get a sequel to an Austin Powers film or another Fletch movie. And thankfully, it's also the reason why we'd never get a Back to the Future 4. Sometimes studios, like Disney, follow where the money goes, and sometimes creative people with integrity, like a Bob Gale or a Bob Zemeckis, say no matter how much fans plea and beg for the further adventures of Marty McFly. So fan campaigns are a double-edged sword, and depending on your leaning, if you're against the fandom menace, if you're with it, or how your politics swing, you may shit on one and elevate another. But you know what? Stranger things have happened. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up and share it all over social media, and hell, share the video on Twitter using the hashtag #MakeSolo2Happen, or whatever the hashtag I said in the video was. Let's use their hashtag and see how much traction we can get for this video with their own hashtag. It'll be good for a laugh. I can guarantee you that more people will see this video than a Solo 2. And that sounds harsh, but that's the case. It's a reality. If you're a super fan of this channel, join our Patreon page. $1 a month goes a long way, but $5, which is only 17 cents a day, gets you access to all kinds of exclusive digital content, more bonus podcasts, commentaries, and you can request stuff and you can be involved on the channel the higher you go. If you're involved in social media, find us on social media. We're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we're here on YouTube, obviously. And we're going to expand our social media presence. So if you guys have any recommendations for reliable, trustworthy platforms, well, tell us where we should go and we'll go there too. World Class Bullshitters has had a hell of a year. We've grown crazier than we expected. I mean, we've grown over 50,000 subscribers this year alone, and it's just June, so we're hitting that halfway mark. So another awesome year, and we could not have done it without each and every one of you out there. So thank you, as always. And folks, do me one favor, one solid. When you're done watching this video, go out into the world and be excellent to each other.